Caesar Cortez wanted to see a video on how to modify and build a reliable Mazdaspeed. So that's what we gotta do. What causes them to break, how to build one reliably, how to fix all the common problems. Let's go. Now before we start, your man's a clown, so if I miss anything out or get anything wrong, just say in the comment. Or if you have any ideas, because I'm not Scotty Kilmer and I don't know everything. So first of all, let's just go over a quick thing. We need to understand what causes an engine to be unreliable or to blow up and stuff like that. Simply put, it's stress. Let's say if you had a 2-litre engine with 200 horsepower or a 4-litre engine with 300 horsepower, what one's going to be more reliable? It's actually got to be the more powerful 300 horsepour 4-litre engine, because even though it makes more power, it's twice the size. It's much easier to make that power. But that sort of is not the full story. You see, power doesn't kill an engine, torque does. And on these 2.3s, we sort of see that the 400 wheel foot-pounds is sort of the limit. Though, of course, less stress is better, so the lower the torque, the better. That's the weird thing. If you're going to modify it, the tuner is probably one thing that really makes the car very reliable. You know, you could have this tuner who can get a whole bunch more power across the whole RPM band, you know, make that turbo come in harder. But a good tuner will purposely tune in turbo lag to protect the engine. Essentially, we have to understand that power is equal to torque times RPM. And at, 3 to 4,000 RPM, its RPMs are low. So to make a lot of power, you need a buttload of torque, because power is torque times RPM. And we have that whole bunch of torque down at those low RPMs. That's when you gotta see it blow up. That's why a good tuner's got to purposely tune a bit of lag, play with the wastegate duty, so that that power comes in nice and smoothly. You don't have too much down low, and that limits your torque. That's the thing, it is sort of safer to have heaps of power on a high RPM when heaps of torque isn't necessary, since the RPMs are naturally very high, the power will naturally also be high. But then there's this sort of balance, right? Let's talk stress. The less stress the engine is under, the better. But less stress means less power and less RPMs.
Less power, baby!
Power and RPMs is fun. So, you do actually have to balance, how fun you want the car to be versus how reliable you want it to be. You could have a setup that's full and ready for 400 wheel horsepower, but 380 wheel horsepower will be more reliable. You could have a setup that allows you to rev right up to 8k, but 7k will be more reliable. It's all about balancing fun and safety. If you're liking this video, surely drop a like, and if you like Mazdaspeed stuff, we make so much of it, so surely consider subscribing. Now, one thing that can make your car a lot more reliable if you're going for a modified car is to run ethanol, or E85. Let's say we have a car with 350 wheel horsepower on 91. That's got to be notably less reliable than another 350 wheel horsepower car on E85. It's a stronger fuel. And that's sort of the reason why you don't really need that many mods at all to run 340 with the Mazdaspeeds on E85, but you need a lot more mods if you want to run 340 wheel on pump. But let's talk sort of power levels. When have you got that right balance of power and reliability? Stock power level, it's got to be the most reliable. It's under the least stress, obviously. But that's not fun, is it? 300 wheel horsepower is still plenty reliable. You're not really sacrificing that much reliability at all. Once you go beyond that, you'll see that reliability starts to take a compromise, but that's the same with any heavily modified car. I don't care if it's a Speed 3 or a brand new F90 M5, if you heavily modify them, they gotta be less reliable. But don't think you can be a highly modified car and not be reliable. A bunch of our viewers have really high power cars that have been very reliable. Booster Control 100, he's had a big turbo with 380 wheel horsepower for the past 13 years. He's on 140,000 miles, and he really hasn't had that many issues at all. Nolan Grass, he's on 143,000 miles, full bolt-on, and hasn't had many problems at all. Because it kind of is down to how you treat it as well, and that's where we gotta go into these notes.
Hey, you are not ready for this! Are you not?
The best thing you can do for maintaining your Mazdaspeed is, do maintenance. Oil changes, try to get them done every 3,000 miles. And just follow everything as it should, spark plugs, serpentine belts, all that. And another thing, if your MAF sensor fails or any sensors fail, get a quality OEM Bosch Denso replacement, not some cheaper thing that's gotta fail in 6 months, and you're gonna need to buy a proper one anyway. In fact, that can be said for all the modified parts you get. Get quality parts. Otherwise, they may break. You might get some cheap yin-yang spinny thing. It isn't gonna last as long as if you go, a corksport turbo, BNR, Garrett, all that. That's if you want reliability. And another way you can make it more reliable is the way you drive it. I want you to let it warm up.
Get it! Look at me, I'm stealing his glory. I'm stealing his glory, folks! Remember, folks, it's a Toyota, so she's probably gonna last.
When you're done driving, just let it cool down. That's how I get all the hot turbo flowing out. And if you know anything about any metals, cooling down gradually is a lot better than just cooling down. Another thing, don't lug the engine. Don't be in like 6th gear and floor it at 2,000 RPM, building all that boost. That's not good. So to the next point, you're gonna have to modify it correctly. Do all the right parts in the right order. Follow mod guides. Do your high pressure fuel pump first, for example. Then continuing on from that, we've got the common problems. Now, I've done 2 whole videos, explaining all of these in depth, symptoms, possible fixes, and all that. We'll just go through this quite quick. So your timing chain.
It's...
Honestly, it is just kind of maintenance. You can't really stop it from happening. It's just like any other car. You gotta have to replace the timing belt. It's just on this car, it's a timing chain. Another thing is your rear motor mount. I know it's not the engine, but they break. So if you don't want that to happen, just get an aftermarket rear motor mount that's a bit stiffer, and it's not going to allow your engine just to flex around everywhere. Another issue we have is because we've got direct injection. So basically, right, you have your EGR and your PCV systems. These get carbon and buildup, and it reroutes it to the intake, where that carbon buildup sits on your intake valves. Now, most cars this isn't a problem because you've got port injection. The injectors spray on the intake valves and clean it all off. However, direct injected cars like the Speed, the injector goes directly into the cylinder, so it doesn't clean it off. So how do you fix that? Well, you can just do carbon cleanup, or there's one way to stop it entirely, is you go meth injected. This has got to add essentially another injector after the throttle body, and then that's got to spray meth on it and clean it. I mean, if you want to make heaps of power, you need meth. Gives really cool power delivery. So that's a good way to convince your significant other that it's for reliability, not to be very fast. Though I get it, that's pretty excessive, so what's going to be easier is just to get an EGR delete, so there's none of that build-up coming from the EGR, and a catch can, which basically reroutes all that carbon build-up again. Instead of going to the intake manifold, now it goes to the oil catch can. Of course, another issue is turbo seals. They are going to blow, so just wait for them to start to smoke. You'll see blue smoke coming out your exhaust, and then get a quality aftermarket one. This could be, a BNR S1. Or, you go big turbo. And of course, if you go bigger turbo, you're gonna need a good tune. Like I said before, your tuner basically tunes in reliability, so get a good one. Also, there is a slight issue with the intake manifold design, particularly the runner for cylinder 3. It does cause a little bit of flow imbalance. Basically what that means is the different cylinders, some might be running a bit leaner, some might be running a bit richer. It doesn't affect reliability too much, but if you're really dedicated to it, that'll be something you want to look at. So then what modifications should you have to make your Mazdaspeed more reliable? Well, a turbo, your high pressure fuel pump internals, perhaps meth for the carbon cleanup, though with that it can take you a while to sort of get out all the issues and little problems that meth may bring. Or, if you don't want meth, you get a EGR delete and a catch can. Add on to that your balance shaft delete, and if you're really picky, that intake manifold. Pair that with E85 so it's easier to make the power you want, and then get a conservative tune, though I know us. We don't want a conservative tune, do we? But that's it. If you did enjoy, surely hit the like. Check out my Instagram maybe, and if you like Mazdaspeeds, it's the Mazdaspeed channel, so maybe subscribe. Bye bye.